So a couple weeks ago, I saw this image on Instagram and I thought to myself, it would be an absolutely perfect opportunity to teach you guys how to create and document something like this on ArchiCAD 24 and then take it into Twinmotion to export a beautiful render that's even more incredible than what it looks like in life. What's going on, guys? My name's David Tomic and welcome back to the channel. This is probably going to be a bit of a longer video than usual, so I'm probably going to break it up into two parts. So in part one of this tutorial, I'm going to show you exactly how we can replicate this beautiful Instagram image and take it to a full PDF document that you can start using as a design point of view. We're going to be talking about the ground floor plan, how you can set up your footings, your slabs, all your walls and all your windows, as well as an interior design element of this video. And then we're going to be talking about the elevations and the external side of the building. Once we have all of our floor plans and our elevations set up, we're going to move it over into the layout book and show you exactly how to export this as a full PDF so you can utilize it and share it with anybody that you like. The second part, we'll take it into Twinmotion and we'll actually export and render a beautiful, realistic render that you can showcase on your social media or even use it in your portfolio if you're looking for a brand new job. Okay, so we've started by opening up ArchiCAD 24, and in my instance, we're gonna select the Australian standard template and just go new profile. So I'll drag it over to the screen that I'm recording, and on the left-hand side of the screen, we have the image that we're gonna be trying to replicate and redesign. Now that ArchiCAD 24 is opened up, the first thing you want to do is actually save the file so that it automatically saves and doesn't cause you any problems if something does crash for some instance. So what we want to do is go to File, down to Save As, and save it anywhere you want. For me, I'll probably save it onto the actual desktop. Click Save. So now that we've saved it, it's going to continuously to autosave if you've set that up, which is by default set up on ArchiCAD 24. What we're trying to do is replicate this image here on the left, which is a beautiful container looking home sitting on the edge of a cliff. It is a relatively simple design and relatively quick and easy to model. So this is a video for all levels of ArchiCAD users. So in my personal opinion, the best thing to do here is start by actually modeling the main body of what we can see here and then progressing further on from there. So if we look at this image here on the left, it has a very thin mono-pitched roof going 1 degree backwards. It sits on what appears to be a concrete floor on 2 I-beams, and it's relatively self-supported underneath of the rock. So we're going to start by modeling the base of the floor, moving up to the walls, then to the roof, and then modeling all the elements around, and then we'll slowly start to integrate the furniture as well in part 2 of this video. The first thing you want to do is open up the level settings, which is either Control or Command depending on your system, and pressing the 7. So this opens up our story settings, which as you can see here, we have ground, first, and roof. What the first thing you want to do is insert a floor below and call it footings, because we can see that we have these I-beams underneath and they are technically our footings in this development. They don't need to be 3 meters. I think they're probably only about 180 UBs, but we'll go 200 for the purposes of argument and keeping it easy. The ceiling in this space looks quite high, so this lady is probably about 1.6, 1.7 meters tall, so at the pinnacle of that is probably about 3 meters. So it's safe to say that we can keep it as the ground floor to the first floor is 3 meters. However, because we don't have a first floor in this, we can delete that story, so we only have our footings, our ground, and our roof. Personally, I like to uncheck these on the side to remove them from elevation views later on, but you can keep them on, you can keep them off. We'll come back to that in a little bit. So you just press OK, and because we've deleted the first story, it's going to come up with a warning. You just click delete anyway because we're not really interested in it whatsoever. So as you can see, we're already on our footings level, but because we've created a new layout, we're going to go into our organizer. So clicking this little house here, going down to show organizer, and then opening up the organizer and reassessing how we actually structure our organizational point of view. So for me, it's always easiest to just drag and drop these and create a new folder here. We're in Sketch Design, we have all these views already set up, but personally I'm gonna hold Shift, I'll do that again, hold Shift, click on Roof, and drag and drop that into Sketch Design. I'll also rename all of these to just footings. I'll probably do them in capitals, footings, rename, delete, ground floor, rename, delete, roof plan. And if I close this now, you'll see that they've popped up on the right-hand panel in our organizer under sketch design. Again, you can structure your template however you want. My personal template is structured completely differently to this, but this is the standard template that you get when you open up Archicad. So you can see if we go into ground floor, this up the top right left-hand corner changes to ground floor. We go back to footings, it changes depending on the levels. So we'll start with the footings in this case, and we'll start with just a relatively simple slab. So the slab actually sits inside the building itself because the windows go past. So what we're going to do is create a slab using the slab tool. The slab can be generic. We'll edit the spaces and the model preferences later. So we'll start by creating a standard shipping container size. So a standing shipping container is about 6 meters long and about 2.5 meters wide. That's the 20-foot model. You can get the 40-foot model as well. It's probably not a standard shipping container, but we're just using that as the base of our guide. So we'll create that as 6 meters by 2.5 meters. So now that we have our slab that is 6 meters by 2.5 meters long, we can press the M key to bring out our measuring tool and double check that. So that's 6 by 2.5 meters, and we can start developing everything over and above that. So we can see the master bedroom is at the front, and then we're guessing that we have the rest of the, I'm assuming, little hotel style room overlooking the cliff at the back. So we'd have predominantly our master bedroom here at the front, our entry probably at the back, and our bathroom in the back corner. So we're going to go back up to the ground floor level, and that footing will disappear. So what I'm going to do is right click on the footings and go show as trace reference, so we can see where we've actually created our slab. And then we're going to move over to our wall tool and make sure that it is on wall's external layer. The next thing we're going to select is the type of wall. So looking at this, it'll probably be some sort of timber frame structure with a timber cladding around the outside. What kind of wall you select is completely up to you, depends what you're trying to create. So at the bottom, you'll see we have a 70mm stud partition or a 90mm stud partition. Personally, this would probably be a 120mm stud, but because it's simple and easy, we're going to use the 90mm stud option. All we have to do is really click, hold, and if we hold shift, we lock it in at certain degrees. So holding shift locks it in at 90 degrees, go all the way around, and we have our perimeter walls. We have the show all in 3D option here, but we can also right click, go down, show all in 3D to see how far along we've already come. So straight away, we've actually designed a slab, we've got some walls happening, and we're slowly creating this model that we see in front of us. If we click on this main wall structure already and open up the settings by clicking on the settings dialog up here, or by pressing Ctrl T, we can see how tall walls are. So the walls are actually linked to the next story level, so they're going to be immediately 3 meters. If you actually want to change it, you're going to have to change it to not linked, and then you can change it to 2.5, 3 meters, whatever you want it. And because we are using 3 meters, that setting doesn't actually matter. So we can exit out of that to cancel those settings that we messed with, go back into it, and then start playing with the actual materials. So the first one is the outside face, which is the blue line along the boundary of the walls. This is the actual connection of where it ends. So if we run one wall, you can see the end of it, and the inside is obviously the inside. Now, because this is a 2-part series, there is 2 ways to do it. We can actually create this texture here on Archicad 24, or we can just select any random texture and utilize the textures material in Twinmotion. For me personally, I think it's best to show you guys how to create a texture from scratch so we can actually import it and use it properly. So we want to create a timber looking texture. We do have a bunch of woods down here on the side, which is really good, but we'll go from scratch. So we'll exit out of that. We'll go to window, we'll go to toolbars and make sure that attributes is checked. If you have attributes checked, that means you're going to be able to have this section of the palette open. What we're looking for is this little brush. The brush lets you change all your materials. So we're going to click on the brush, bring that into the screen that we have recording, and we'll select wood just to make it simpler. That is the wood that is currently being used, and we're just going to click new. And again, I'll drag that over here and I'll go wood vertical gray. It doesn't matter what you call it, you can call it anything. You can change all your materials however you want. So we'll just go duplicate. I'm going to change the surface color from this brown to a more gray. So about there is fine for me. It's not really that important because we're not rendering in Archicad, we're rendering in Twinmotion. And then we're going to change this vertical hatching background. Now, off the top of my head, I can't remember if there is or isn't, but there is a corrugated horizontal 10mm hatch there. So we can use that for now, and then I'll also show you how to create a vertical hatching to actually emulate this hatching on your elevations if this isn't the correct one you're looking for. We also want to change this material here to something else. So we just go browse, it'll pop up another window and we're going to add a new one. For the purposes of argument, I've already got 1,000,001 different textures saved. They're just Googled seamless texture. Look for something similar to that image on the left-hand side and try find something nice that looks kind of similar. So that one there is probably pretty good in my opinion. We just go File, Save As, and just save that to Downloads and go Save. So we can close out of Google, come back into this textures. If I go to my downloads, wherever my downloads are, downloads, find that wood texture, open it up. It'll open up the wood texture here. We go OK, and it replaces that wood texture. Now, I like to keep the proportions of the original texture that we've actually used because that way it doesn't mess with the size and scale and proportions. So we've changed that, we've changed the spectrum color. This element pen, if you're using a black material, you'll probably have to change the element pen to a different color because you won't be able to see it. But in this instance, it'll have nice black lines in the elevations, which we'll get to in a minute. So then we just click OK and we've created a new texture. Now, because the vertical hatching we've selected isn't identical to what is shown on this image on the left, we want to recreate a better vertical hatch. So what we do is come up to this fills section and select something similar that we're looking to replicate. So in this instance, we're trying to replicate just some vertical lines and keeping it very simple and very easy. I think for the purpose of argument, we can select most of these, but go through and select something that is similar to what you're trying to create to really make this process as easy as possible for you guys. I think maybe the Hebel pattern at a vertical 45-degree angle is probably pretty good. So if we go new vertical timber and we'll say it's 125mm spacing for the purposes of argument. I'm not entirely sure if it is, but that's okay. We'll probably change this to scale with paper model. So 125mm, 125mm, and 90 degrees. So now we have 125mm vertical spacing of timber, and to make sure this pattern changes so we know exactly what it is, we're going to click and hold to get rid of those patterns, and again click and hold to draw some new lines. And you can see up the top now it's recreated a new vertical timber pattern. Now before we close this palette, we just want to make sure we tick all three of these so we can use it with absolutely everything. That way we don't have to come back into this palette again. We just click OK, go back into our surfaces and rechange our vertical hatching. So if we change this to vertical timber 125, click OK, click on this wall, go back into the dialog settings, change the outside to vertical gray wood that we created before and click OK. We'll see that we have that texture that we imported from the internet directly applied here, so we can mix and match it later on in Twinmotion. We also have our slab down the bottom, which is just a generic slab. We probably don't need it to be anything, it's just going to be concrete, so we'll go user defined and open up the settings again by clicking Command T or clicking on that dialog box. We can change the structure of the basic composition. It probably looks like 150mm thick slab according to that, and we're just going to tick them all, link them, and change it to concrete if we can. So it's just going to be a concrete structure. We click OK, and then we're going to click on this corner and drag it all the way up so it's actually hidden underneath this wall here, because as you can see in the image, it's recessed into the wall. So because the front part of this building here is going to be mainly windows and glass, we can see that the pitch of the first windows on the side is raking a little bit with that 1 degree skillion roof. But the front section of this glass is entirely flat. So if we go to our window tool, select window, and type in window at the top, we're going to have a variety of all the different windows that we can select. So if we scroll to the top and just search the windows which we best think is going to work for this project, I think trapezoid window 24 will be absolutely perfect. They are entirely fixed windows, so we'll just go fixed glass. So they can't open, they are just genuinely fixed windows. Start going through these settings one by one to try and actually replicate this window here. So we know that window is 3 meters tall, and we also know it's probably about 2 meters wide. Now we're going to continue to make that sash in the middle and change the pitch of the raking of this top of this window. So we're going to go through the settings one by one. So we have to change this to by top angle and total height, so it doesn't mess with our total height over here. Now that I'm looking at this, it's probably more so 3 degrees, if not more, maybe 5 degrees. Yep, I think 5 degrees probably looks a bit better on this representation here. So we're going to change that window to 5 degrees. The lower side of that's going to be 2825. The upper side of that's going to be 3 meters like we sent it. And then we're going to keep going through them to find the sash in the middle. So we can use this grid section here to create sashes. And the easiest way for me is always the HV grid. We only need 1 vertical and we only need 2 horizontal. So there we go. We perfectly have that section set up. Now, I don't like the fact that it's orange, so you can immediately override it by overriding lines and overriding fills. So going straight to black, and perfect, that is completely overwritten. Now we click OK, and we can actually center our window to the corner here. The one thing we forgot to do is actually create this corner glass here that is more so a silicon joint than anything else. So we'll open up those settings again, go into the special window settings, and find our cornering in this menu. So custom corner is under fixtures and settings. Custom corner 2, we want to rotate it at 90 degrees, and we'll click OK. So we've actually selected the wrong one, which we can go Control or Command M, click the center to flip that window across. If we click and select the drag function, we can drag it to the corner. By holding Command or Alt, we can replicate that window very simply. Now we have those 2 windows created on the side. All we need to create is that last third window there. So we open up our window tool again, and we're looking for probably just window 24, very standard window that we can mess with and play with to create the best replica of that we can find. So window 24, we'll go through the settings just like we did before. So we go fixed glass, start at the top to make it easy, and slowly tick through. We don't need to really change too much of these settings because they're basically just a very basic window. All the frames are the same. We're going to change that HV grid again to 1, and we'll go 3. So we have that. It is going to be 3 meters tall, and it's going to be 2.5 meters wide, because that's how wide we made our sea container in this instance. And the last thing we're going to change is our custom corners. So both corners in this instance are 90 degrees. We click OK, we place our window, and then we drag it to the end. So I clearly haven't made this the right size. If I click on my dimension tool and find out how big we made this, it's only 2.3 including that. So what we'll do is actually extend that 120 mil, select these 2 walls and press Control I to join them again. So again, select 2 walls, Control I joins them at the top. So we're still probably not at that perfect 2.5, but that's okay, that'll work for now. And now we have those 3 windows created and overlapping perfectly. If we go back into our 3D model, they're sitting too high up, so all we'll do is select those 3 windows and change this sill height to 0. Now you see that we see that concrete slab underneath sitting just like it is on this image here. The only difference is potentially the window frames are the wrong color. So we'll open up those settings again. Because we're only changing the color, we can change them all at once. So then instead of going to corner, we're gonna scroll up to openings and model attributes. Now you can see it's all wood, but we want to uniform the window surfaces, and it's just going to be some sort of black. So we'll paint it ivory black, it'll change them all instantly, and the glass can stay glass clear fast for the time being. So we click OK, and now we've changed our windows to these black frame industrial windows, very similar to they have over here. And we're going to continue creating this interior model. So if we move back to ground floor plan, what we can see is the next real basic principle is the roof. If we move up to roof plan and do the same thing by going over show as trace reference. So to draw our roof, all we need to do is come to our roof tool, select either the flat roof or the pitched roof. In this instance, we're doing a single plane geometric roof. So we're going to select our pitching point from this side over here, and we're going to tell it that it's raking this way upwards, and then all we have to do is really create a rectangle around. So we've created our rectangle, our roof is created. If we go back to 3D, we'll see it is ridiculously high and it is ridiculously too thick. So we'll just do 5 degrees, and what we're going to do is actually change that, the settings and thickness of this roof, because as you can see on the image to my left, it is very thin in comparison to what we have drawn here. So it again looks like a concrete roof, so we'll just change the material of timber to concrete, and we'll change the thickness of that. That looks like a very thin roof. I'm only going to guess 90 mil. And we're also going to change the surface override to concrete, same as that slab. So for some reason that has a hatch on it, and we definitely don't want that. So we're gonna jump ahead a little bit here and go to surfaces again, find concrete 2, which is already selected, this grid, and we're just gonna turn that grid off. So we really don't need anything to really show there. So we're just gonna select it as airspace and click OK. Now what we have to do is click on the edge and drag that roof vertically down as best as we can. By holding shift, you can go along the y-axis, select it perfectly at the edge of that roof, and there we go. We've lined that roof up to the top of this building. What you'll see is we haven't cut any of the walls, so we're going to select all the walls and right click, connect, trim elements to roof shell. You'll get a little warning, you just click trim, and our roof is created. And there we go. Now we have our building starting to come together, starting to look like this over here. It's potentially a little bit too high, so this lady may not have been 1.6, 1.7 meters tall, but that's okay. We have the basic elements of what we see over here. If we scroll back up to our ground floor plan, it'll open up our ground floor plan, and we can see one square window over here above the kitchen, and one small square window here near the bedroom, which I'm guessing is either next to the bedside table or in the bathroom. So if we want to create that, we go into window tools again, open up the window palette, and to reset this window 24, we just click on another window and then click back on window 24, and we're back to the basic settings. They look like awning windows in this instance, so we're going to go top hung windows to give us an awning. And they probably look 1200 by 1 meter. Yeah, so 1200 by 1 meter looks approximately right. We're really guessing because we don't have any information but that image there. So what we're going to continue doing is changing those model attributes, same as we did before. So just tick all them, change the window to ivory black, and click OK. Now that window is somewhere about here, and this window is somewhere about here. Now those windows definitely look too big, so I'm going to reduce them in size to 600 by 800, and this one is too low. I reckon that's only about 500 mil off the sill, maybe even lower, 400 mil. So we're about 400 mil off the side here. We're going to hold Alt or Command on our keyboard, and then we're going to hold Control and Alt to duplicate those settings and replicate them for those two windows, and we're just going to move that one up to 1 meter. because the kitchen bench is normally 900 mil. Putting it 100 mil above that kitchen bench is probably about accurate. So now if we go back into our footings layer, we can still see our building as a trace reference over the top. We'll go to our beam tool and open up the beam settings so we know what we're doing here. If we go down into segment, we automatically have the setting to create it into a U-beam, and then we can scroll through these 1,000,001 options to find what our beams might look like. So in this instance, this IPE 240 is probably the best option we have at the moment, and it automatically changes that shape to the UB. We're also going to change the materials to some sort of metal. It doesn't really matter what we do, it's probably steel, so it's gone to a dark grey. It's 240 tall by 120 wide, which is probably perfect for what we're looking for. And we're just going to simply draw 2 beams running this way, and now we can copy this by going to the drag tool and then pressing Control to hit the plus and moving that further here. We'll probably be a little bit more pedantic about it and move that 500 millimeters from the edge and do the same with that one. So now we've moved our I-beams 500 mils from the edge. They are still floating in thin air, but what we'll do is just select them, go Control D, move them up and run them underneath the building. 500 mil was probably a bit of an overkill, so I'll move them back 200 mil to each side. Something that's starting to resemble this a lot better. What you'll see is also a connection base underneath, which is a simple beam. It isn't as complex as this, so we'll go back into our beam tool and we'll just go a basic square beam. That looks like a 90 by 90 piece of steel that is orange for some reason, but we'll keep it as generic steel in our model. It does look like this building is actually cantilevering a little bit, so maybe we push this beam back 200 mil, click on this, select the stretch tool and move that back in line. So now that our building will cantilever over a little bit. We'll do the same on this side. By holding shift and then pressing the D function, you can change these settings. So if we have the stretch tool activated, you'll see that as we move it back, the distance remains the overall distance, but the second you hold shift is when it changes. So not holding shift 4,000, 5,000, holding shift 1 meter, a couple hundred, depending how far you are from this. So by holding shift, moving back, pressing the D key at the same time, I can let go of shift and D, type in 200, and we have our overall beams moved back 200 from the edge. With this beam here, what I want to do is click on the outside and select this multiply tool. The multiply tool is super handy and it's very easy to use. In this instance, I want to distribute. So I want to click here once and click here a second time and create, well, I don't know, there's 6 meters, probably, let's say 5 of these beams at a 1 meter spacing. So we click here once and we click there a second time, they're all copied, they're all replicated. So if we go back down to our 3D model, you can see we've created that framework. By holding shift and clicking on all of these, we can select them at the same time, and then pressing Control and D, we can move them to the top of these beams. Now, as you can see, they're probably not connected to these beams at all. They would most likely be welded direct fixed to here. So the easiest way to do that is just to stretch them to the center, and then personally I'd just delete these and repeat the steps we just did. So offset, multiply, distribute, 5 copies, okay, stretch, drag, done. Now if we go back to our 3Ds, they'll be pushed to the edges, they'll be welded direct fixed there, which is something that you can note later on. But overall, we have the shell of our building completed. Okay, so now from a design point of view, we probably want to do something in the interior. So we're just going to go to the ground floor again. We need to have some sort of entry. So we'll go door, open up the panel settings. The first thing we want to do is just go back to the top. We can change the size of the door, the style of the door, everything in here by going through. So this will probably be a full glass door because everything else is glass in this instance. We can click on this little square door here to give us all of the framing widths and sizes. So we'll just go 50 mil, 50 mil, 50 mil, and it'll give us a really nice, clean, thin framed door. All we have to change there is the model attributes, same as we did before. So there it is, paint ivory black. The glass can stay the same, and the floor plan will tick those, change it to black. Perfect. So now we can install our door here. 900 wide is a relatively good sized door, and we can begin understanding what this floor plan could look like. So internal walls will change our layer from walls external to walls internal. We'll change our stud partitioning. Doesn't really matter. Most internal walls would still be 90 mil, but we can change it to 70 for the purposes of argument. Drag that over here, because I believe just to the edge of that, 2 meters, and there's our bathroom constructed. What you'd like to do and make sure is that you have enough distance to walk. So 950 mil is probably a little bit tight. I'd personally like it at 1100. Selecting those two again, we can go Control I to merge them quickly, and then we don't need that dimension anymore, so we can delete it. We have our bathroom here, so we also need a door. We don't want a grid, it'll be a very solid door because it's your bathroom, you don't really need to see inside. And we'll change the width of that door to 800 mil, so it's a much smaller door. And then if we just drop our little door here, we don't need any of this custom text. So if we go back into our settings, now if we go into tags and labeling on the side here, we can discard that custom text. So if we click the floor plan, you'll see that that changes the custom text. The leaf width dimension is probably not correct, but for the purposes of this, it doesn't really matter. We'll keep it at 744. And now we have our bathroom created. It'll be a very small, it'll be a very tight bathroom, but we'll play with that in a second and make that work really well. As you can see, there's a bed here that's pushed right up against this wall, and there is some sort of bookcase in the middle separating the kitchen and the main viewing deck. Now this building is probably a little bit tight, a little bit constrained, so we might have to move these around a little bit to make them work, but we will work together to make this building look exactly like this. So I think to understand the rest of this space, we really need to understand if this bathroom will work. So let's start by adding a couple objects. So we'll go to the objects, change the object layer from landscaping to MEP plumbing, and then we're just going to look for a toilet object. The toilet objects could come up as a different name for you, so WC24 for me, and I don't like that it's purple, so we override everything and just make it simple black. So that gets rid of that. So we're going to drop our toilet in. We're not going to really worry about where it is at the moment. We're going to copy it across. We're going to open up our settings again, put in a shower, look for our perfect shower object. So we have our shower cabin. That is a very basic object. It's good for size. 800 by 800 is a very, very small shower, but we'll see what we can fit. We'll maybe make it a little bit bigger, and we'll copy that across. The last thing we need in our bathroom is a hand basin. So a simple hand basin for the purposes of this design. We can change those settings again to make that nice and black, and we'll probably pick a rectangular hand basin because that's a bit old and ugly. Now, depending on the type of shower that you use, it could be a screen door, it could be a curtain rail, it could be all sorts of different designs. So it really depends what you're planning on using, but because it is such a small space, we'll assume it is a curtain rail. So there's no doors swinging, there's no doors whacking. You can kind of just enter it freely from any side. We want to rotate this shower, and the easiest way to do that is Control E, or you can click on one of the black dots and select the rotate tool. By holding Shift again, we can do that 90-degree rotation, and then Control M allows us to flip it and mirror it 90 degrees. So Control D to move that toilet out of the way, Control D to move that shower into this space here. Control E lets us flip the vanity, move it across to here. And as you can see already, this is a very, very tight space, and this isn't going to work. So that's why it's always good to understand the spacing and sizing of everything. Now, in my personal opinion, this just won't work. It's not going to work no matter how much you move it, how much you shuffle it. And if you are designing it from scratch, you want to make it a bit wider. So personally, what I would actually do is drag this wall at least another 500 millimeters, if not even more, to make this bathroom significantly larger, connecting all these walls by pressing Control I, and then simply extending this window by holding the move node and connecting it to the new edge. So now that's 3 meters wide. We have a much larger space for this bathroom. We can move this across and we can actually put our toilet next to our shower. So we'll move the vanity to the middle. Now, unfortunately, we'll have to go back to our footings layer and readjust our footings. So the easiest way is simply by starting with the slab, extending it across and moving that 500 millimeters, selecting all of our beams in the middle and dragging them 500 millimeters down. There is alternative ways to do this, but this for the time being is just the quickest and simplest way to show you guys. So now we move back to our ground floor plan, and that is our roof that we also have to extend 500 millimeters. And we have our main space created. So now because this is a bathroom, we want to show some tiles. We'll go to the fill tool. We have to change this across to our very first option to be able to get a lot more options. This is a 300 by 300 tile, 250 by 250, 400 by 600. So 300 by 300 is a good example. Click and drag, and there we go. We're showcasing that as tiles. Now the next thing we want to do is create this little kitchen over here. So what we'll probably do is just simply extend that wall across a little bit further. And again, we're going to need more space to actually create that kitchen because we only have 1 meter here. If we put a 600 deep kitchen in, it means we're only going to have 400 millimeters to walk past and squeeze past our kitchen. So very similar to how we dragged that out 500 mil, we're going to do the exact same on this side. So now we have a lot more space on this side, which means we can also most likely put that bookshelf in there instead of a wall. So we'll get rid of that wall back there and we'll start creating our kitchen. So the easiest way to create a kitchen is using an object. We'll come into objects. So we have a number of different kitchen elements in our CAD 24 that you can choose from. It's probably just going to be a very simple kitchen. So we're just going to select that kitchen there, which isn't anything fancy. It's just a 3 cabinet kitchen with a sink in the middle. Apply our kitchen to the edge there. Now, personally, if we look at the 3D again, we'll see a couple things that have gone wrong. These 2 walls are over the top of the roof, so we're going to trim them to the roof again, similar to how we did the exterior. We're going to come to our Explore Man, drag the kitchen and the window up a little bit in line with that slab because we actually created that slab wrong. And overall, we're probably not too far from the look of that kitchen there. So for the time being, we can just keep it as is. If we go back to our ground floor plan, we have our main kitchen. We have our bedroom, but we don't have a bed. So we're going to create a new object and just type in bed and pop in any random bed for the time being. Use the rotate tool to rotate it how we want. Push it down, and there we go. We have our first bed. I would actually be tempted to say that bed goes that way, perfectly along that wall, and then we'll import that bookshelf in Twinmotion. Now really all we have to do is put a couple bits of text in and showcase the elevations of this building as well. So for the text, it's very simple. You go to the text tool, tap anywhere, type in bath, and change it to black. So we want to center that text 200 millimeters and put our bath here, copy it across, bed, copy it across, kitchen, and lastly, we'll call this the lounge for the purposes of this design. And there we go, our ground floor plan is completed. Now, I just want to take a quick little break here and a quick pause to mention something very exciting on this channel. This channel has been growing phenomenally well over the past couple months as I'm producing more and more architecture content, and you guys are loving it. So thank you so much for being a part of this community and helping this channel grow. Because of all of your support, I've been able to reach out to one of my premium brands that I love working with. So if you look at my past 12 months of videos, if not even longer, you'll notice that I'm always wearing a black shirt. And most of the time, if not 99% of the time, it's more than likely a Cuts shirt. I've been wearing Cuts for a good year, and they've genuinely been the best shirts I've ever purchased in my life. So I decided to reach out to them and see if they were willing to partner up on this channel to be able to help me produce better and better content every day. So if you're in the market for the highest quality shirts in the game that are just so buttery and soft and smooth, and the second you put them on, you know they are absolute premium quality, there's a link down in the description below. If you don't want to, or you're not in the market, that's absolutely okay. I just genuinely appreciate you guys being on this channel, learning and producing better architecture. Okay, so I've just recorded this section twice, and both times there's been an error with my phone. So I'm re-recording this section for the third time, and hopefully this works without a glitch. Basically, at this point in time, we are setting up some elevations and taking our completed ground floor plan and elevation designs into a layout book to export it as a PDF. You'll see that I've already dragged these 4 elevation markers across closer to my building and changed the color of them. So all I've actually had to do to change the color of them is select them all, click on the elevation dialog settings, go into marker, uniform pen color, and change that to black or whatever color you want. Personally, I like to set them up similar to this style, very close to the building, and they are named appropriately E1, E2, E3, E4. All of those correspond with the elevations under the sketch design elevation sections here. So elevation 1, if we click on it, will showcase the building from this side, 2, this side, 3, that side, and so on. So if we were to click on elevation 1, for example, it would open up that side of the building looking away from the rocks. The first thing we want to do is take a polyline tool, change it to green because that's my color of preference for the ground level, and get away from the arrowhead. We want to start drawing a natural ground level that somewhat resembles what we see in the image. So what we've drawn here is a simple green line just stopping before the edge of the building, and it falls away indicating the rock levels and then the water level down below. NGL in Australia stands for natural ground level. This could mean a number of different things in your region and in your zone, so call that whatever it needs to be called, but for the purpose of this, it's just simply NGL. The other thing that we can do on an elevation at a very early sketch design stage is just showcase a couple annotations of what is going on in this. So we could, for example, show an arrow from here to this cladding saying timber cladding, from here to this window saying window, and another one to the roof saying roof at 5 degrees. So just as simple as that, all we had to do was really draw a polyline, change the color to black, select an arrow and draw our arrow as required and put some text over the top. So changing it to black, that's exactly how we created all of those annotations there on the side. So all we have to really do now is replicate it throughout the elevations. Because I am recording this for the third time, we'll jump through these elevations and I'll just talk you through why I did exactly what I did. Elevation 2 looks at the rear side from the natural ground level, and you wouldn't see the cliff or any of the water. So all we've had to do is draw one green line underneath those beams, which I've annotated steel beams as per engineer's documents because it's very early in the design, and annotate a door. So there's nothing really complex happening here. The only difference is there is no water level on this side because it would be beyond in the distance. Elevation 3 looks at the complete opposite side of elevation 1. So we've literally just copied and pasted this green line and mirrored it across to create an identical ground floor of the other side, and just again copied and pasted those annotations across. Finally, elevation 4 looks at the front of the building, which is what we see in that amazing image And it's literally, you're looking at the ground and you're looking at the water if you were to look at it dead on. So all we've done in this is draw 2 green lines, one for the natural ground level, one for the water level, just very generally assuming where the water level could be, because we have no information from the surveyor. We have no actual realistic information on this project. We're basically just making it up to see if we can replicate what we see on Instagram. Now that those 4 elevations have been completed, we want to export it to a PDF so we can actually take that project to somebody and show them what we've actually done, or even send it to them in an email. So we want to move across to our layout book, and you'll see there is a number of different options in the layout books. I personally don't like their layouts. They're just too confusing, too complex. There's too many stages in all sorts of bits and pieces. So I always have a tendency to create my own. The easiest way for this project, because it's a very small project, is just to create a 1-page piece of paper that showcases everything. So we're going to go down to the bottom, create a new layout and call it Cliff Home, for example. It can be called whatever you want, and change that to an A4 portrait title block and click create. So it automatically creates that A4 title block page with the print guides, so you don't have to chop anything off when you're actually printing. I will go into another project of how to actually create these title blocks, what information you need, but for the purposes of this, you can very quickly and easily just change any of this information in the master section. So if I double clicked on that master project, you can actually go through, open the source view and change all this information as required. So we're not going to go into that in this video. We're going to close that master section there and go back to Cliff Home. So for the Cliff Home, what we need to do is open our view map, scroll up to the ground floor plan, click and drag our ground floor onto this layout book. What you'll see is it's dragged quite a large section of the layout over, and we don't need that. So we're going to use our offset edges and bring this back in to a much more manageable viewing platform and viewing space, and then click Control D to move it into the center top of our page. I'm very pedantic about title blocks and everything lining up, so I like to stretch out my title block so it aligns with the invisible edges. It makes no sense, but it does when you're working in ArchiCAD. Now we also want to have some sort of scale bar and north point on this project. We haven't created one on our ground floor plan, we haven't created one anywhere, but we can simply open up an object tool, type in scale to get our first scale bar, click OK, introduce that into the project. We'll move that a little bit further away from the house, and we'll do the exact same thing with the north point. Now you can use any north point you want, you can annotate it however you want. For the purposes of this project, that one's absolutely fine. You have a variety of different options. We'll change it for the sake of just changing it and introduce a new north point here. So now we have our north point, we have our scale bar, and if we go back to our Cliff Home in the layout book, we can drag another floor plan across and find our north point and scale bar. So one additional step that we didn't do in the last one, because we wanted that title block, is opening up the settings dialog and simply going to title, linear drawing, title, no title. That removes and eliminates the title, so when we actually drag this closer and hide everything else in this layout, we don't have an additional title for no reason. Now you can drag this anywhere you like. In this instance, I would probably take away that north element because it's not required. Now, if I was to drag this somewhere, I don't really like that. I'd probably copy and paste that one across, hide the scale bar, hide the north point, and then move them individually. So I'd prefer my scale bar here above my ground floor plan, and I'm happy with my north point there. What I then want to do is highlight all of my elevations inside my view map, drag my elevations across, let them update, which takes a couple seconds, move them all to a place where I can see them away from the layout book, find elevation 1, drag that onto my sheet of paper, find elevation 2, repeat that for all 4 of these, elevations. And then what we want to do is actually just start lining some bits and pieces up. So we want to align the natural ground level with that natural ground level. We want to align the title block by selecting move sub element with this title block. And we want to align that title block by clicking the stretch button with that imaginary window. Finally, I'll move that a little bit closer to that elevation and center it. We'll repeat that exact same process with these two down here. Last but not least, we just have to export this as a PDF. So all we have to do is click that cliff home and select that page. If we have multiple pages, just hold shift and click on the last page to select them all. Then we want to go to File, Save As. We need to change it from Archicad Solo Project to PDF file. And then we want to click on Document Options. So basically it's going to come up by default as entire layout, but we want to change it to selected layouts in Navigator only. Depending if you want it in black or white or color, you can also change that, but I'll keep it for color for the time being. And then literally all you have to do is press the save button. Within a matter of seconds, it'll be saved to your desktop. So if we go back to our desktop, open up our PDF, we'll see that that PDF has been exported exactly like we set it up in Archicad. It is a very typical PDF format, so you can use that as you would use any other PDF. You can print it, you can email it, you can copy it, you can do whatever you absolutely like with that PDF. Anyway, that's all for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. If you did, make sure you smash that subscribe button down below. And as always, I'll see you next Monday.